The moment I saw my daughter walk into that courtroom with her expensive lawyer, I knew this wasn't about love. This was about money. After 13 years of silence, 13 years of never calling her children on their birthdays, 13 years of not sending a single penny for their care, Kesha suddenly wanted to be their mother again. What she didn't know was that I had been preparing for this day, keeping every piece of evidence in a yellow envelope that would expose her true motives. My name is Dorothy Washington, and at 67 years old, I found myself sitting in a cold courtroom, my arthritic hands clutching the proof of a truth I'd protected for over a decade. Across from me sat my daughter Kesha, dressed in her finest suit, pointing at me as if I were some criminal who had stolen her most precious possessions. Her lawyer, a sharp-dressed man named Malik Johnson, shuffled through papers with the confidence of someone who believed he held all the winning cards. The gavel struck the wooden bench, and Judge Jerome Coleman's voice filled the room. The sound echoed through my chest like thunder, carrying with it the weight of all the sleepless nights, all the sacrifices, all the years I had spent raising children that weren't originally mine to raise. "Your Honor," Kesha began, her voice trembling with what she tried to pass off as maternal pain. "My mother has kept my children from me for 13 years without my permission. This constitutes kidnapping. I never gave her authorization to take them." The word kidnapping hit me like a physical blow. I glanced back at my grandchildren sitting in the gallery. Marcus, now 20, sat tall and serious. Jasmine, 18, held herself with quiet dignity. Aaliyah, 16, watched the proceedings with wide eyes that reminded me so much of my own at that age. Their faces showed confusion and hurt, as if they were watching a stranger claim ownership of their lives. Judge Coleman peered at me over his glasses. "Mrs. Washington, how do you respond to these allegations?" My fingers tightened around the yellow envelope. Inside lay 13 years of truth, carefully preserved like precious artifacts. "Your Honor," I said, my voice stronger than I felt, "I didn't kidnap anyone. I simply raised the children my daughter abandoned on my doorstep without a backwards glance." "That's a lie." Kesha shot to her feet. "I never abandoned them. I was struggling with severe mental health issues. I needed temporary help, not permanent separation." Her lawyer placed a calming hand on her arm. "Your Honor, my client was hospitalized for postpartum depression. She required urgent medical intervention. Mrs. Washington took advantage of that vulnerable state to alienate the children from their biological mother." The courtroom filled with murmurs. I could feel people making judgments, choosing sides based on incomplete information. But I knew the whole truth, lived it day after day for 13 years through fever-broken nights, homework battles, and tears wiped away when little voices asked why Mommy didn't come back. "Mrs. Washington," the judge said more gently, "caring for your grandchildren must have been challenging, but if the biological mother is requesting custody—" "With respect, Your Honor," I interrupted, my voice carrying more authority than I expected, "there are facts this court needs to hear before any decisions are made." I raised the yellow envelope high. It was a simple gesture, but I watched Kesha's eyes widen with what looked unmistakably like fear. "What kind of evidence do you have?" Judge Coleman leaned forward with interest. "Proof of what really happened 13 years ago. Proof of why my daughter is suddenly here today. And it has nothing to do with maternal love." Kesha's face went pale. "Mom, please don't do this to me." "Do what, daughter? Tell the truth." Attorney Johnson cleared his throat nervously. "Your Honor, Mrs. Washington is attempting to distract from the core issue. Whatever happened in the past doesn't change my client's legal rights as a mother." "On the contrary," I said, meeting my daughter's terrified gaze directly, "these documents explain exactly why we're here today. They explain why after 13 years of complete silence, of not contributing a single dollar to her children's expenses, of never even calling at Christmas, my daughter suddenly appears with legal representation." The silence that followed was heavy and thick. I could hear my own heartbeat, the nervous rustling of papers, the shallow breathing of my grandchildren behind me. The tension in the room was palpable, like the air before a devastating storm. Judge Coleman studied me intently. "Mrs. Washington, Are you suggesting there are ulterior motives behind this custody lawsuit? I'm not suggesting anything, Your Honor. I'm stating it as fact. My eyes locked with Kesha's, and I saw in them the same guilty expression she'd worn as a child when caught in mischief. And every bit of it is documented here. Mom, Kesha whispered desperately, please think about what you're doing. I've had 13 years to think, I replied. 13 years of midnight fevers when Marcus was sick. 13 years of school conferences where I was the only family member present. 13 years of waiting for a phone call from you that never came. Judge Coleman tapped his gavel gently. Mrs. Washington, are you prepared to present this evidence to the court? I looked at the envelope in my hands. Inside were letters Kesha had written, photographs I'd preserved, receipts I'd saved, and something else. Something that would change everything. Something even my grandchildren didn't know I possessed. Yes, Your Honor. I'm ready. The judge nodded and consulted his docket. Very well, Mrs. Washington. But before examining these documents, I want to hear your complete account. Tell us exactly what happened 13 years ago. I closed my eyes briefly and transported myself back to that gray Tuesday morning in October that changed all our lives forever. I was in my small kitchen, brewing chamomile tea to calm my nerves after a doctor's appointment where my arthritis diagnosis had been confirmed as worsening. That's when the desperate knocking started at my front door. It was nearly noon, I began, feeling my voice soften with memory. Kesha appeared at my door with all 3 children. Marcus was 7, Jasmine was 5, and Aaliyah was barely 3 years old. They were dirty, their clothes wrinkled and stained. The little ones were crying from hunger, and they all looked like they hadn't been properly cared for in days. I glanced at my grandchildren. Marcus gave me an encouraging nod, as if he remembered fragments of that terrible day. Jasmine's eyes glistened with unshed tears, and Aaliyah hugged herself protectively, exactly as she had done as a frightened child. My daughter burst into my house like a hurricane. She carried a single plastic bag with some of the children's clothes thrown together, nothing clean or organized. She told me, Mom, I need you to watch them for a while. Just a few weeks until I get my life sorted out. Kesha lowered her head. Her lawyer whispered something urgent in her ear, but she seemed unable to respond. I knew she remembered that day as clearly as I did, every painful detail. I asked her what kind of problems she was facing, whether she needed financial help, if something had happened with the children's father. But she just kept repeating that she'd be back soon. She gave each child a quick kiss and walked out. The children ran to the window crying, Mommy! Mommy! But she had already climbed into a waiting taxi and disappeared. The courtroom was absolutely silent. I could feel people holding their breath, drawn into the memory of that heartbreaking scene. That night, Marcus asked me when his mommy was coming back. I told him soon because I believed it then. Aaliyah cried for her teddy bear that had been left behind at Kesha's old place. Jasmine, my sweet Jasmine, helped me prepare dinner with her tiny hands, as if she instinctively understood that keeping everyone together had suddenly become my responsibility. My voice cracked slightly, and I paused to sip from the water glass the court officer provided. Days turned into weeks. I didn't know where Kesha was living because she'd moved without telling me. I had no phone number to reach her. The children asked about her constantly. Marcus started wetting the bed again. Jasmine stopped speaking for almost a month, and Aaliyah developed a persistent cough that wouldn't go away. I watched Kesha shift uncomfortably in her chair, her hands trembling as she fidgeted with her jewelry. The weight of her abandonment was finally being spoken aloud in a court of law. I decided to enroll them in the school near my house. I needed their official documents, their birth certificates. When I went to Kesha's old address, the neighbors informed me she had fled the apartment, leaving 3 months of unpaid rent behind. The landlady handed me a box of belongings my daughter had abandoned, including some of the children's paperwork. Judge Coleman took notes carefully. Did you attempt to report this situation to the authorities? Your Honor, I believed it was temporary. Kesha had faced difficulties before, but she had never completely abandoned her children like this. I thought she would return. Besides, what crime was being committed? A mother had left her children with their grandmother. There was no law against that. I paused and looked directly at Kesha. But months passed, then years. Marcus turned 8 and asked if he could invite his mom to his birthday party. I told him we'd try to find her. Jasmine started first grade, and when the teacher asked about her parents, she pointed to me and said, "This is my mom, Dorothy." Tears threatened to fall, but I held them back. This wasn't the time for crying. This was the time for truth. The expenses multiplied quickly. My pension barely covered my own needs, and suddenly I was feeding, clothing, and educating 3 growing children. I sold jewelry I'd been saving. I took weekend jobs cleaning houses. My neighbor, Miss Lorraine Coleman, helped by watching the children when I had to work. Judge Coleman looked up at the familiar name. "Any relation to me?" "She's your sister, Your Honor," I replied. "And she can testify to everything we endured during those first difficult years." Kesha and her lawyer exchanged worried glances. This connection was clearly unexpected. When Aaliyah turned 5, we faced a crisis. She contracted pneumonia and required hospitalization. The doctors demanded health insurance information, parental authorization, documents I didn't legally have. That's when I decided to pursue legal guardianship of the children. My voice grew stronger and more determined. I hired an attorney with the last of my savings. It cost me $800 I couldn't afford, but it was necessary. The lawyer attempted to locate Kesha to notify her about the guardianship proceedings. We published legal notices in newspapers as required by law. No one responded. Not a single person. "Did you obtain legal guardianship?" the judge asked. "Yes, Your Honor. 10 years ago, this very court granted me full legal guardianship of my 3 grandchildren. I have all the documentation. For 3 years, as required by law, we continued searching for the biological mother. She never appeared, never called, never contributed financially." Kesha jumped up abruptly. "I was sick. I had severe depression. I couldn't care for them in that condition." "Please sit down," Judge Coleman ordered firmly. Then he looked back at me. "Continue, Mrs. Washington." "The children grew up under my care. Marcus graduated high school with honors and received multiple college scholarship offers. Jasmine won poetry competitions and excelled academically. Aaliyah learned to play guitar and formed a band at school. When they needed therapy, I took them. I handled all their medical appointments, attended every school event, celebrated every birthday and achievement. I looked back at my grandchildren and saw Marcus nod with tears in his eyes, confirming every word I spoke. I never lied to them about their mother. I always told them she loved them but couldn't take care of them at that time. I showed them photographs of her from when they were babies. I saved every drawing they made for her, hoping she would return to claim them someday. "And they had no contact with her during all these years?" the judge asked. "Not once, Your Honor. Not until 2 months ago, when she appeared at my door with her lawyer and a custody demand." Judge Coleman leaned forward with sharp interest. 2 months? And what changed after 13 years of total absence? I smiled slightly, because here came the part Kesha desperately wanted to keep hidden. I raised the yellow envelope higher. "That answer, Your Honor, is contained in these documents." Judge Jerome Coleman extended his hand toward me. "Mrs. Washington, please approach and present the evidence you've mentioned." I stood slowly, feeling my knees protest from arthritis, but my determination was stronger than any physical pain. I walked toward the witness stand with the yellow envelope pressed against my chest. I could hear Kesha's nervous breathing, the clicking of her heels against the wooden floor. "Your Honor," Attorney Johnson said, rising to his feet, "I request that any documents presented be examined by the defense before being admitted as evidence." "Of course," the judge replied. "Mrs. Washington, please hand the documents to the clerk for review by both parties." I opened the envelope carefully, as if it contained priceless treasures I'd protected for years. My fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the overwhelming emotion that the truth was finally coming to light. Inside were photographs, handwritten letters, receipts, and folded papers that formed the heart of this entire story. "Let's begin with these," I said. pulling out a packet of photographs tied with a faded red ribbon. "These are pictures I took the day Kesha left the children with me." The clerk took the photographs and passed them to the judge, who examined each one carefully. His expression gradually changed, becoming increasingly serious and troubled. "Describe what we're seeing in these images, Mrs. Washington." The first photograph shows Marcus wearing dirty, torn clothing. You can clearly see his shoes have holes in the soles. The second shows Jasmine with dried food stains on her face and severely tangled hair. The third is little Aaliyah, wearing a diaper that obviously hadn't been changed in many hours. Kesha covered her face with both hands in shame. Her lawyer whispered something urgent to her, but she shook her head repeatedly, unable to speak. "Your Honor," I continued, "I took these photographs because I wanted to document the condition in which the children arrived at my home, not with any intention of using them against their mother, but because a nurse neighbor advised me it was important to maintain a record of everything." The judge passed the photos to Kesha's attorney, who reviewed them quickly and showed them to his client. I watched my daughter close her eyes tightly, as if trying to erase those shameful memories forever. "Now," I said, pulling out a second group of documents, "these are letters Kesha wrote to me during the first 6 months after abandoning the children." The judge took the letters and immediately noticed the handwritten script. "These are written in your daughter's own hand?" "Yes, Your Honor. I would recognize her handwriting anywhere." I looked at Kesha directly. "Tell the judge what those letters said, daughter." Kesha remained silent, but her lawyer took the letters and began reading them. His expression changed dramatically as he absorbed their contents, his confident demeanor crumbling. "Your Honor," I said in a clear, strong voice, "in the first letter, dated 3 weeks after she left the children, Kesha wrote that she had met a man named DeAndre Williams and was moving with him to another city. She asked me to care for the children a little longer, because her new partner didn't want immediate family responsibilities." The silence in the room was so complete you could have heard a pin drop. All eyes focused on Kesha, who had begun crying silently. "In the second letter," I continued relentlessly, "she informed me that she was pregnant with DeAndre's child and couldn't return for her existing children because he had threatened to leave her if she brought burdens from the past into their new life." "Pregnant?" the judge asked with obvious surprise. "Yes, Your Honor. My daughter had another child with DeAndre Williams, a son who is now 12 years old and lives with them. A child she was able to raise because it was convenient for her new relationship." Marcus, Jasmine, and Aaliyah exchanged looks of shock and betrayal from their seats. This information was completely new to them. I had never told them about their younger half-brother, because I didn't want to cause them additional pain. In the third letter, my voice grew harder and more determined, Kesha asked me to sign legal papers officially relinquishing any claim to her so she could start her new life without complications. She offered me $500 for the expenses I had incurred with her children up to that point. Attorney Johnson had gone pale. This information was clearly not part of the story his client had told him. "And did you sign those papers?" the judge asked. "No, Your Honor." I wrote back telling her I didn't want her money, but if she truly wanted to disappear from our lives, she should do it completely. I told her not to contact us again until she was genuinely ready to be a mother. I pulled another document from the envelope. This is her response to my letter. The final communication we had in 13 years. The judge read the document, and his expression hardened noticeably. "Mrs. Washington, would you please read aloud what this letter says?" I took the paper with trembling hands, but my voice emerged firm and clear. "Mom, it's fine. I won't bother you anymore. Take good care of the children because I have my own family now. If anyone ever asks, tell them their mom had to go far away for work. I don't want them to suffer anymore. Sincerely, Kesha." Tears streamed down my grandchildren's faces. Marcus started to rise from his seat as if to comfort me, but Jasmine gently stopped him, taking his arm. "Your Honor," I said, carefully putting the letter away. "For 13 years I respected that decision. I never searched for my daughter. I never attempted to contact her. I raised her children with love and with the limited resources I had, hoping that someday she would mature and return for the right reasons. And why do you believe she has returned now? Judge Coleman asked the crucial question. I smiled sadly as I pulled the final document from the envelope. Because 3 months ago, Your Honor, my brother Robert Washington, Kesha's uncle who lived in Texas and had no children of his own, passed away. The judge leaned forward with renewed interest. And what does that have to do with this case? My brother, Your Honor, left a significant inheritance to each of his great-nieces and nephew, $50,000 each for Marcus, Jasmine, and Aaliyah respectively. Kesha sobbed louder, and her lawyer appeared to be considering abandoning the case entirely. But the inheritance, I continued with unwavering determination, can only be claimed by the children if they are under the custody of a direct blood relative, either their mother or their grandmother. As their current legal guardian, I had already initiated procedures for them to access that money when they reach adulthood. Judge Coleman looked at me with intense focus. Are you suggesting that Mrs. Kesha Washington returned solely to gain access to her children's inheritance? I pulled the final papers from the envelope. Your Honor, this is a private investigation report I commissioned regarding my daughter's recent activities. It shows that exactly 2.5 months ago, she hired the services of Attorney Johnson and began investigating my brother's inheritance. Kesha's lawyer stood up abruptly. Objection. That investigation is private and illegal. It's completely legal, I replied calmly. I hired a licensed private investigator after my daughter suddenly appeared at my door making legal threats. I had every right to protect my grandchildren's interests. The judge tapped his gavel for order. He looked at me with an expression that mixed respect and curiosity. Mrs. Washington, is there anything else in that envelope the court should know about? I looked at the envelope, which now felt much lighter, but I knew it still contained the most devastating secret of all. Yes, Your Honor. There's something else. Something even my grandchildren don't know yet. Judge Jerome Coleman adjusted his glasses and fixed me with an intensity he hadn't shown before. Mrs. Washington, what else does that envelope contain that you consider relevant to this case? My fingers searched for the last document hidden at the bottom of the yellow envelope. It was a sheet folded multiple times, yellowed with age, but containing the most important words in this entire story. However, before revealing it, I knew there was something else I needed to do. Your Honor, before showing this final document, I would like the court to hear directly from my grandchildren. I believe it's only fair that they express their own opinions about this situation. Kesha sat up hopefully. Her lawyer nodded quickly. Your Honor, my client agrees. The minors have the right to express their preferences. The judge considered the request. Very well. Marcus Washington, please approach the stand. My eldest grandson stood slowly. At 20 years old, Marcus was tall and lean, with intelligent eyes that reflected both his grandfather's wisdom and the sensitivity he'd inherited from our family. He walked to the witness stand with measured steps, as if each movement required conscious decision-making. Marcus, the judge said gently, I understand this situation must be very difficult for you. I want you to know you can speak freely. Do you remember your biological mother? Marcus swallowed hard and glanced briefly at Kesha before answering. Yes, Your Honor. I have some vague memories. I remember there was a lot of chaos at home. I remember that sometimes there wasn't food, and Grandma Dorothy would show up with grocery bags. I remember the day we arrived at her house, and she bathed us, gave us clean clothes, and made us chicken soup. And how do you feel about your mother's absence during these years? Marcus closed his eyes for a moment. Your Honor, for a long time I was angry. I didn't understand why my mom didn't come back. My school friends had parents who picked them up, who attended their soccer games, who helped with homework. I had Grandma Dorothy, who worked 2 jobs to support us and still never missed a school meeting. I watched Kesha cry silently as Marcus continued with a maturity that broke my heart. When I turned 15, I stopped being angry. I understood that Grandma had sacrificed her peace, her health, and her savings for us. I understood that she had no obligation to raise us, but she did it because she loves us unconditionally. And now that your biological mother has returned requesting custody, how do you feel? Marcus looked directly at Kesha. Mom, if I can call you that, I'm glad to know you're doing well. I'm glad you overcame your problems. But I can't pretend these 13 years didn't happen. I can't pretend it doesn't hurt to know you formed another family, while we grew up wondering what we had done wrong to make you leave. The silence in the room was absolute. Kesha sobbed even louder. Where would you like to live, Marcus? The judge asked. Your Honor, I'm already of legal age. I can make my own decisions legally, but if my answer can help protect my younger sisters, then it's clear. I want to stay with Grandma Dorothy. She's the one who raised us, who loves us unconditionally, who never abandoned us. Marcus returned to his seat, and the judge called Jasmine forward. My 18-year-old granddaughter walked to the stand with grace that had always characterized her, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. Jasmine, you're also of legal age. What is your perspective on this situation? Jasmine took a deep breath before speaking. Your Honor, I have clearer memories than Marcus because I was older when we came to live with Grandma. I remember my biological mom cried a lot. I remember sometimes she would stay in bed all day, and we had to take care of ourselves. I was sick. Kesha shouted from her seat. I had postpartum depression. The judge silenced her with a stern look. Please allow the young lady to finish. Jasmine continued steadily. I understand you were sick, Mom. But I also remember the day we arrived at Grandma Dorothy's house. For the first time in a long time, someone asked us if we had eaten. Someone read us bedtime stories. Someone told us everything would be okay. Tears ran down my cheeks as I listened to my granddaughter's words. Grandma Dorothy took us to therapy when we had nightmares. She enrolled us in activities so we wouldn't feel different from other children. When I was 14 and diagnosed with juvenile diabetes, she learned everything about nutrition, glucose monitoring, everything she needed to care for me properly. The judge took notes as Jasmine spoke. Regarding staying with my biological mother or grandmother, Your Honor, my biological mom is a stranger to me. I know she shares my blood, but Grandma Dorothy shared my childhood, my adolescence, my fears, and my dreams. The decision is easy. Finally, the judge called Aaliyah. My youngest granddaughter, 16, approached the stand with the determination that had always characterized her. She was the most physically similar to me, but possessed a rebellious spirit that reminded me of Kesha at that age. Aaliyah, you're a minor, but your opinion is very important to the court. What do you remember about your life before coming to live with your grandmother? Aaliyah looked at Kesha with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. Your Honor, I was very little, but I remember things. I remember being hungry. I remember crying and no one coming. I remember the smell of the house where we lived, a smell of sadness and abandonment. Kesha folded in on herself as if her youngest daughter's words were physical blows. But I also remember, Aaliyah continued, the first day at Grandma Dorothy's house. I remember she gave me a warm bath and put me in clean pajamas that smelled like fabric softener. I remember she made me warm milk with honey before bed and sang me lullabies. Would you like to get to know your biological mother better? The judge asked. Aaliyah thought for a moment. Your Honor, I won't lie. I'm curious about the woman who gave me life, but I'm also scared. Scared that she'll leave again. Scared that her promises are like the ones she made 13 years ago. And where do you feel safest? With Grandma Dorothy. Your Honor, she has never failed me, never lied to me. When I asked why my mom had left, she didn't invent pretty stories. She told me the truth that sometimes adults make difficult decisions, and that she loved me enough to stay. Aaliyah returned to her seat, and the judge addressed me again. Mrs. Washington, your grandchildren have been very clear about their preferences. Is there anything else the court should know before making a decision? I looked at the yellow envelope in my hands, then at my 3 brave grandchildren. They had courageously spoken their truth. Now it was my turn to be brave with mine. Yes, Your Honor. There's something else. Something that will completely change the perspective of this case. I pulled the last document from the envelope. It was a sheet I had folded and unfolded so many times that the creased lines were permanent. This is a document I found 2 years ago among the belongings Kesha abandoned in her apartment. A document she wrote and signed herself. Kesha turned white as a ghost. Her lawyer leaned toward her urgently, but my daughter shook her head repeatedly. What kind of document, Mrs. Washington? A voluntary relinquishment of parental rights, Your Honor. Written in my daughter's own handwriting, signed and dated 3 days after she left the children with me. Judge Jerome Coleman stood up abruptly, his expression transforming from professional curiosity to absolute shock. A voluntary relinquishment of parental rights? Mrs. Washington, are you certain about what you're saying? Completely certain, Your Honor. I extended the document toward the court clerk. This paper was among the belongings Kesha abandoned in her apartment. The landlady gave it to me along with photographs and other personal documents my daughter left behind. Kesha stumbled in her seat as if about to faint. Her lawyer took the document with trembling hands, and his face lost all color as he read it. This can't be real, he murmured. Read it aloud, please, the judge ordered. The lawyer cleared his throat and began reading in a choked voice. I, Kesha Washington, 26 years of age, hereby voluntarily relinquish all my rights as mother of Marcus Washington, 7 years old, Jasmine Washington, 5 years old, and Aaliyah Washington, 3 years old. I acknowledge that I do not have the emotional, economic, or psychological capacity to raise them adequately. The silence in the room was so profound you could hear everyone's agitated breathing. My grandchildren looked at each other with expressions of confusion and deep pain. Continue, the judge said in a grave voice. I fully authorize my mother, Dorothy Washington, to make all legal, medical, and educational decisions related to my children. I waive any right to visit them, contact them, or claim them in the future. This decision is definitive and irrevocable. Signed, Kesha Washington. Dated October 15, 2011. Kesha broke into hysterical sobs. I was crazy. I didn't know what I was writing. I was mentally ill. The judge rapped his gavel repeatedly. Order. Mrs. Washington, do you have witnesses that this document was written voluntarily by your daughter? Yes, Your Honor. The landlady of the building where Kesha lived, Mrs. Beverly Johnson, can testify that my daughter asked her for paper and pen to write an important letter 3 days after leaving the children. She can also confirm that Kesha was conscious and coherent during those days. Attorney Johnson whispered urgently to his client, but Kesha continued sobbing uncontrollably. Furthermore, I continued, there's something else the court should know. Something I discovered only 2 weeks ago that explains why my daughter returned exactly now. All eyes focused on me. I could feel the tension in the room intensify to an almost unbearable degree. Your Honor, I hired a private investigator not only to learn about my daughter's recent movements, but also to fully understand her current situation. What we discovered is very revealing. I pulled a small folder from my purse. Kesha and her partner DeAndre Williams are facing a severe financial crisis. 6 months ago, DeAndre lost his job. 4 months ago, they received an eviction notice. 3 months ago, exactly when they learned about my brother's inheritance, they began proceedings to obtain custody of my grandchildren. Kesha lifted her head, her eyes red and swollen from crying. Mom, please. Let me finish, daughter. My voice was firm but not cruel. The investigator also discovered that you and DeAndre have been living on loans and credit cards. You owe more than $30,000 in accumulated debt. The judge reviewed the documents I provided, and you believe your grandchildren's inheritance is the solution they're seeking for their financial problems? I don't believe it, Your Honor. I know it. I looked directly at Kesha. Because a week ago, my daughter called me for the first time in 13 years. The surprise in the room was palpable. Even my grandchildren looked at me in astonishment because I hadn't told them about this call. And what did she say in that conversation? The judge asked. She told me she had matured, that she had overcome her problems, and that she wanted her children back. When I asked her why after so long, she said she had been saving money to offer them a better life. I paused dramatically. Then I asked her about my brother's inheritance. There was a long silence, and then she said, Mom, that money belongs to my children. I just want to make sure they receive it at the right time. And what did you reply? I told her that her children already had access to that inheritance through me, their legal guardian, that the money was safely held in trust funds until each reached 21. It was then that her tone changed completely. Kesha covered her face with her hands, knowing what was coming. She told me that as their biological mother, she had more right to manage that inheritance than I did. She told me she had consulted with a lawyer and could legally fight for custody. She threatened me, Your Honor. The judge leaned forward intently. How did she threaten you? She told me that if I didn't voluntarily transfer custody and control of the inheritance, she would accuse me of kidnapping. She said she had witnesses who could testify that I had intentionally alienated the children from her. She told me that a judge would always favor a biological mother over a grandmother. Marcus suddenly stood from his seat. Grandma, why didn't you tell us she threatened you? Because I didn't want you to worry more than necessary, I replied softly. And because I knew the truth would come out at the right time. The judge rapped his gavel. Young man, please take your seat. Then he looked at me. Mrs. Washington, do you have that phone conversation recorded? No, Your Honor, but I have something better. After that call, my daughter sent me several text messages where she repeated her threats. Messages that are saved on my phone and printed for the court. I pulled out the message printouts and handed them to the clerk. The judge read them in silence, his expression growing more severe with each message. Could you read some of these messages to the court? The judge asked. I took the printouts and read in a clear voice. Message from July 18th. Mom, think it over carefully. I'm the biological mother and any judge will side with me. Don't make this more difficult than it needs to be. Continue. Message from July 20th. I've been talking to my lawyer. He says what you did could be considered parental kidnapping. You could go to jail. And the final message, my voice grew stronger, from July 22nd. Mom, if you give me custody voluntarily, we can reach an agreement on the inheritance. 50-50. You keep half for having cared for them. I keep half because I'm their mother. But if you force me to go to trial, I'll take everything. The judge placed the documents on his desk and looked directly at Kesha. Mrs. Washington, do you confirm that you sent these messages? Kesha sobbed, unable to speak. Her lawyer looked completely defeated. Your Honor, I said softly, I want to make it clear that I'm not seeking revenge against my daughter. I understand she went through difficult times when she was young. I understand that early motherhood and mental health problems can lead to desperate decisions. I looked at Kesha with sadness but also determination. But what I cannot accept is that after 13 years of total absence, after formally relinquishing her rights as a mother, after forming a new family and completely forgetting these children, she now returns only because money is involved. What do you request from the court? The judge asked. That my permanent legal guardianship over my minor grandchildren be confirmed, that my daughter's custody demand be completely rejected, and that a restraining order be issued preventing Kesha from approaching the children unless they, when of legal age, voluntarily decide to have contact with her. Kesha shouted from her seat. You can't take my children away from me forever. I turned to her with an expression that mixed pain and firmness. Daughter, you gave them up 13 years ago. I'm not taking anything from you. I'm simply protecting what you abandoned. The judge declared a 30-minute recess to review all documentation presented. The courtroom partially emptied, but I remained seated, holding my purse against my chest like a protective shield. My grandchildren approached me, surrounding me with their arms in a silent embrace that spoke louder than 1,000 words. Grandma, Aaliyah whispered, why did you never tell us she had given us up in writing? Because I wanted you to have the opportunity to form your own opinion about your mother when you were old enough to understand. I didn't want you to grow up with hatred in your hearts. Marcus squeezed my hand. But you lied to us all these years when you told us maybe she would come back. I didn't lie, my love. There was always the possibility that she would mature and return for the right reasons. I held on to that hope for a long time. I looked to where Kesha sat with her lawyer in desperate whispered conversation. But when she called me a week ago, I knew immediately that she hadn't returned for you. She had returned for the money. Jasmine sat beside me. What's going to happen now, Grandma? I don't know, my child, but I know we've told the truth, and that's all we can do. During the recess, I watched Kesha slowly approach us. Her lawyer tried to stop her, but she ignored him. She walked with hesitant steps as if each foot weighed 1,000 pounds. "Mom," she said with a broken voice, "can we talk privately?" "No, Kesha," I said gently but firmly. "Everything that needed to be said has been said in front of the court and your children." Her voice trembled like when she was a child who had done something wrong. "I know I made terrible mistakes, but I've changed. I've really changed." I looked at her with sadness. "If you had come back for love, if you had come back because you truly missed them, maybe we could have built something. But you came back for money, and that tells us everything we need to know about who you really are." When court reconvened, Judge Coleman's expression was stern and resolute. He rapped his gavel once for attention. After careful review of all evidence presented, this court rules as follows. The permanent legal guardianship of Mrs. Dorothy Washington over minors Jasmine Washington and Aaliyah Washington is confirmed. A 5-year restraining order is established against Mrs. Kesha Washington. The custody demand filed by Mrs. Kesha Washington is declared null and void, and she is prohibited from filing similar lawsuits in the future without substantial new evidence of changed circumstances. Kesha collapsed completely, held up only by her lawyer. "Mom," she whispered, "will you ever be able to forgive me?" I walked toward her slowly, feeling the weight of all these years on my shoulders. When I reached her side, I placed my hand on her tear-streaked cheek. "Kesha, I forgave you long ago. But forgiveness doesn't mean I can allow you to hurt these children again. They have suffered enough. What am I going to do now?" she asked in a lost little girl's voice. "You're going to go back home. You're going to take care of the child you have. You're going to work on yourself, on becoming a better person. And perhaps someday in the future, when you have truly changed, my grandchildren will decide for themselves if they want to know you. And if DeAndre leaves me because I didn't get the money?" I sighed deeply. "Then perhaps it's time you learn to stand on your own feet, daughter. Perhaps it's time you stop basing your decisions on what men expect from you." As we left the courtroom, I felt a strange mixture of triumph and sadness. I had won the legal battle, but lost hope that my daughter had returned for the right reasons. But when my grandchildren surrounded me with their arms in the courthouse hallway, I knew I had made the right decisions. Sometimes love means protecting those you love, even when it hurts those you also love. 3 months after the trial, I sit in my small kitchen watching Aaliyah practice guitar for her school recital. Evening light streams through the window, illuminating her concentrated face so much like mine at that age. Marcus is in college studying engineering on a scholarship we worked hard to secure. Jasmine works part-time at a bookstore while finishing high school. Life has found its rhythm again, but differently, more peacefully. There's no longer that constant tension of wondering if someone will come to take the children. No more sleepless nights worrying about legal demands. The restraining order has given us the peace we needed. Mrs. Lorraine Coleman, my neighbor and the judge's sister, often brings by fresh-made tamales and updates about Kesha. She tells me my daughter is working cleaning offices at night, living in a small apartment downtown. DeAndre left her, taking their son Paul, telling her she was a failure for losing the inheritance money. Despite everything Kesha did, she's still my daughter, and it hurts to know she's suffering. But I also know that sometimes people must face the consequences of their choices before they can truly change. One evening, Aaliyah stops playing and asks, "Do you think she's sorry, Grandma?" "I think she's sorry she got caught," I reply honestly. "But being sorry you got caught is different from being sorry you hurt people." "Do you think we'll ever see her again?" "Maybe, my love. But if you do, it will be your choice when you're ready, if you're ever ready." That night, I reflect on the lessons this experience has taught us. Sometimes the truest love is the one that sets boundaries. Sometimes protecting those you love means saying no to those you also love. And justice isn't always punishment, sometimes it's simply allowing people to live with the natural consequences of their decisions, while choosing love over resentment. Today, watching my grandchildren flourish as responsible, caring adults, I know I made the right choices. They are living proof that unconditional love and firm boundaries can coexist. Marcus now manages his inheritance responsibly, setting aside money for his sister's educations. Jasmine writes poetry that wins awards and speaks to the resilience of the human spirit. Aaliyah leads her school band and dreams of becoming a music teacher. Sometimes people ask if I regret anything about how I handled the situation. The answer is no. I chose to protect 3 abandoned children when no one else would. I chose to love them unconditionally when their own mother couldn't. When it came time to defend them, I chose to fight with everything I had. If there's one lesson in all this, it's that real love doesn't abandon, doesn't negotiate conditions, and doesn't disappear when things get difficult. Real love is constant like the sunrise, strong like the roots of an old tree, and quiet like a prayer that never ends. And you know what? At the end of the day, that love is enough. It's more than enough. If this story touched your heart, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Your support means the world to me. And if you enjoyed this, please consider subscribing for more real-life stories that matter. Until next time, remember that sometimes the greatest victories come not from getting what we want, but from protecting what we love.